This will probably end up being a longer video. We're going to cover the last of the chorus effects. This is the EP chorus, and it's based on this unit right here. Let me pull it up real fast. This Dino My Tri chorus effect. KK is the one who ended up finding it, and it's very similar as usual to the actual design. You can see it says chorus in the middle with these two knobs and the switch in the center. And let's very quickly go over the basic parameters, and then I'm going to take a long time to discuss like what chorus is. Even though we've been dealing with chorus and we know what chorus is, showing how to recreate it on a synthesizer will open up a whole new perspective, and you can see just how complex a very simple unit can be. So let's bust out the chorus. Let me patch into insert effect 1. I'm going to take this time to open up 2 instances of the MS-20X. And let me initialize them. Let's see, analog tuning all the way down. And I want to take off velocity. And there we go. That's initialized. Take down intensity. And take off velocity. And this is initialized. I didn't put the mixers down on the other one because I'll only end up using the mixers on this one. So let me mute the second one. Might as well mute the drums too. So right now we just have an initialized MS-20. And let me route the effect to outputs 1 and 2 so we can see it in the spectrum analyzer. So we have our nice sawtooth waveform. Let's pull up our effect, which is number 19 something. 191. Okay. So this chorus unit only has 3 parameters. Technically 2, and then the dry wet. We have depth, we have speed, and we have, of course, the dry wet. Let's go over each one. First thing, let's turn depth all the way down. Let's turn speed all the way up. And let's just listen to let's listen to dry wet, actually. And you know what? Since I want to go for a kind of a basic chorus effect, let's turn the speed down to like 1 hertz. Fine. Now let's turn up the depth, and we'll hear a chorus sound. And we can also get kind of vibrato effects by turning the wet all the way up and turning up the rate. Much like we got a vibrato effect out of the black chorus. So even though we only have 3 parameters to work with, we can still make this a pretty tricky sound by using the AMS modulation sources, the alternate modulation sources. So let's turn depth all the way down, and let's add VGS plus Y, and let's turn the amount all the way up. Similarly, we'll turn LFO speed all the way down, and we'll add VGS plus X. We'll turn that all the way up. And dry wet will turn to 50/50. And we'll use VGS plus Y, and we'll have the remaining 50 there. So when we're all the way up on VGS plus Y, we'll be only hearing the wet. As we move the vector joystick left and right, we'll be speeding up and slowing down the LFO. And similarly, as with dry wet, when we move up and down on the vector joystick, we'll be increasing the LFO depth on the modulation of the delay line. So let's try moving around the VJS and hear what it sounds like. I wonder if I can actually... Oh, and also, let me go to the vector control and turn off volume. And I only want to use positive values for this. Since I am going through extremes, I don't want those extremes to start in the middle of the vector joystick. I want to go from like the bottom to the top and move through the full range of, for instance, the depth parameter. Or move from 50-50 dry wet all the way wet, going from bottom to top, instead of it starting like halfway and then, you know, which is what would have happened if I had the vector control on split. Anyway, I can move this around and you can see these values changing. It's probably easiest to notice them here because you don't want to get distracted by the oscillator volume readout here, which is not relevant in this case. So we are at, even though it says x negative 127, we are really at x0, and then all the way to the right is 127. So actually, you know what? It might be easier to look here since we're at 0 to 127, going from left to right, and going from bottom, we're at y0 to 127. If I'm in the middle for both, of course, we're at 64. So that should give you an idea of what the AMS patches are actually doing. So let's try moving this around. I'll start by going from bottom to top, playing a C3. So we're at 50-50 dry wet with no depth. And as I turn it up, we go to all the way wet, and we get a kind of vibrato. Now if I go to the middle, so Y is 64, and then I go left to right, we'll be turning the LFO rate from slow to fast. Now I'm just going to kind of move this around freely and see what sounds nice. So it sounds pretty nice. So just by patching in the vector joystick, we end up making this very simple pedal much more complex, and we're able to dial in sweet spots. Okay, so now for the difficult part. What if we wanted to recreate this in a synthesizer? What would we need to do? It gets pretty tricky. So I'll turn this off and let me switch my EXIs. So now we're just listening to EXI2, that other blank MS-20X patch. And I'm gonna switch between these with the buttons from now on. I'll let you know, of course, but you won't get that visual cue that I'm switching. And I'll be turning on and off the effect manually. You will see that on screen. So with EXI2 enabled, I know that I want to use VCO1 as a kind of, as like the dry sound. And then I want to use VCO2 as the wet sound. So something I want to point out real fast, in order to really mimic the way this pedal sounds, let me patch noise into the output. Because kind of like the pedals that came before this one, the pedal does color the sound by acting like it's applying a low pass filter. So here's white noise for this sound. And let me go to the effect. Let me turn it on. And I'm going to go ahead and disable these alternate modulation sources for now. And I want to listen to just the wet sound. And I'll leave depth down and I'll leave speed down. So we're only seeing how it's coloring the white noise. You can see that at around 4K, it starts to taper off sharply down to 16K. So let's mimic that with this synth. I'll do that by patching into the low pass filter. Let me disconnect this. And let's turn our filter down. About 16K. And let me give it some resonance in order to get that bump at around 4. And let's hear how that sounds compared to the original. And in order to compare it to the original, let me just set up white noise on the first EXI patch, so that way I could just switch between the two. So this is white noise through the second EXI with the low pass filter. Now here's white noise going through the effect. Oh, it sounded extra low on that one because I forgot to turn it off. I was about to say that didn't sound alike enough, but it does sound alike enough. So here's the noise through the filter, noise through the pedal. Still sounds a little low. Let me try to raise the low pass filter just a tiny bit. Now switching back. Still a little low, but okay, fine. Might as well get perfectionist on this. That's a little high. I can turn down resonance. I think actually I should have gone down on this. Alright, if that's not it, then I'll just move on. They sound super alike. It's good. Okay, so now I know that my dry sound does not have that low pass filter applied. So in order to mimic that in this MS-20, what I'll do is I will take VCO1 and patch it into input A. VCO2 will go directly into the low pass filter, overriding VCO1 from traveling into the low pass filter. Then the low pass filter will go into input B, which will go into the output. And so just to recap, VCO1 is dry, not going through the low pass filter. VCO2 is going to act like our wet sound going through the low pass filter, because that's what the pedal is doing. Moving on, let's disconnect this. So we have our plain saw wave back in EXI1. Going back to EXI2, I no longer need volume for VCO1 level. Since I'm patching things directly, the volume control doesn't really matter for those. Now my volume is controlled by these levels. VCO1 is right here. VCO2 that's filtered is right here. So for now, I only want to hear VCO2 going through the filter because I'm going to only be listening to the wet sound for a little while. Also, since the filter might color the sound a little bit, let's just go straight into the output for EXI1. So now we have this nice bright saw going into the output on EXI1, which is what we're going to use to read the wet of the pedal. And let's continue on. So let's mimic something easy. Starting off with dry wet. So let me go into common and switching the EXI1 and listening to that through the pedal. We have our wet sound at full. Then we have dry wet at 50-50. Now it's going to add a little bit of a delay because if you remember, you can't actually create chorus without some delay to start off with. And I can't really mimic that with the MS-20 because I don't have a phase start on that synthesizer. I could do it in AL1, but AL1 doesn't have enough AMS mixers for this patch to work exactly correct. So I'm just going to do it with the MS-20. So remember, we're thinking about this dry-wet control as two sawtooth waveforms. So when we're going from 50-50 dry-wet to all the way wet, we're only hearing the modulated sawtooth waveform. So to mimic that on EXI2, we want to go to our little patch bay, and we have oscillator 1 patched in here, which is going to act as our dry, and then oscillator 2 is patched into level B, which is going to act as our wet. So if we want to go all the way wet, we basically want to just turn down the volume of oscillator 1. And to do that, I simply will patch in, because we're using VGS plus Y for this, and I'll go with -10. And you hear what that sounds like? I have the vector joystick all the way at the bottom, which will make us hear both sawtooths. And then let me make sure the effect is off. So all the way at the bottom is just two sawtooths. And all the way at the top. And something I actually want to change, it almost sounds like a chorus with it on a 50-50. I don't want that. I want to take off the slight detuning that they have on oscillator 2. There we go. Because otherwise that would kind of create like a chorus sound, and that's not what's happening in the pedal. So again, the pedal is creating a short delay, which I can't mimic, but that also means that those sawtooth waveforms are in a way phase locked. Of course, which phase locked position depends on the pitch of that you're playing. But nonetheless, a short delay is going to manifest as a shift in phase between the two oscillators. But we're still getting very close by doing what we did. So again, I just want to hear that one more time, going from south to north on the vector joystick on EXI2. In other words, fading out oscillator 1 sounds like this. Nice. And it even kind of looked like comb filtering, which is accurate. And then doing the same thing with VGS plus Y on EXI1, going from south to north. And again, only hearing the wet signal shows us that tapering effect. Let's see if we have the same thing going on EXI2. See, we also have that tapering effect. So we're getting very, very accurate with this emulation. And also in okay, I was going to turn off the pitch difference on EXI1, but actually it doesn't matter since we're never going to be using VCO2, but nonetheless. So let's mimic a different parameter since this one's taken care of. I'm going to turn this off for now and then go all the way wet. I still have EXI2 on, but let's switch back to EXI1 and turn this on. Let's mimic, how about depth? So with depth, we're going to use VGS plus Y on 100. And so we're listening to the wet signal only. And let's, in order to really hear this, let's turn the speed all the way up. So from going south to north with EXI1, which will increase our depth all the way while just listening to the wet sound. So that's depth all the way up. I'm going to turn this off, switch back to EXI2, and I know that I want to go up to 10 Hertz, and I basically want to turn up and down the LFO with depth. So let me go here, and I will I'll patch AMS Mixer 3 into here, and you'll see where I'm going with this in a second. And I'll do intensity on, actually I'll do this later to really demonstrate it. Let's go to AMS Mixer 3, and I'm going to do A times B. I'll use LFO 1, and I'll use VJS plus Y, which will act as like the volume for this LFO. I'll turn that all the way up. And then on the LFO itself, I'm going to choose a square wave. That will be the most accurate. I'm going to take off key sync. Since this is a post effect, it's not going to be per voice. And we can turn up random phase start on this because the LFO that's controlling the chorus unit is going to be free running. So let's go to about 10 hertz, which is like, I think 92. And that should be accurate. Now let's turn up the intensity of that alternate modulation source. I know this is quite complicated, huh? Here. So this is going to cause a vibrato effect. So 79, maybe 75. Let's turn it up a little bit. 80. Let's see what it sounds like in the original unit. I switched over to EXI1. Now here's full depth on the original unit. And then full depth on our unit. Cool. And now, again, demonstrating what the vector joystick is doing. Going from south to north on the EXI2. Oh, you know what? On EXI2, I forgot to disable the oscillator 1 being controlled by our vector joystick. So we want to turn this off for now, and I only want to hear the wet. Okay, so let's try again. Going from south to north. And I apparently made some of the mistake. Let me see. This is off. Only listening to level B. Our oscillator. AMS Mixer 3. Where did I mess up? Let's see, intensity's there. It sounds like we're hearing both oscillators there, and that's not right. Oh, because I see what I did there. I accidentally used the phase flipped version. I want this to be at 0. There we are. There we go. All right, third time's the charm. Okay, so south north. Nice. And then listening to the same thing on the pedal. And again on EXI2. Nice. Perfect. All right. So now let's we'll disable this and we will turn depth all the way up. And now we want to focus on using VJS X to change this speed of the LFO. So again, we need to disable the VJS plus Y. And we need to patch in VJS X into the LFO rate, but instead we're going to use AMS Mixer 1. I'm actually going to use 2 instances of AMS Mixer 1 on the LFO rate. I will turn down the LFO rate to like 9. And then on the AMS mixers, I want to use shapers because I want to mimic the response that the vector joystick is having with the pedal, and have the same response on the effect with our EXI build. So I will patch in, let's see, AMS Mixer 2 cascading to AMS Mixer 1. And for AMS Mixer 2, I will use the vector joystick, VJS plus X. Okay, so to demonstrate what's happening here, let me go back to the pedal and I'll turn that onto EXI1. And so VJS plus X is all the way to the, when it's all the way to the left, it will be, the LFO will be traveling at, like, what is it? Oh, let me turn this LFO all the way down at 0.1 hertz. All the way to the right, it will be traveling at 10 hertz. So let's see what that sounds like. And now in the middle here, I can go to my basic vector tab. So you can see I'm at x127 and then x64. Listen to how fast it's traveling at 64. And now listen to how fast it's traveling at 127. So first, let's mimic 127 to see what that sounds like. Let me go to EXI2. Actually, I need to turn off the pedal real fast. Okay, so with X, VJS plus X all the way to the right, I want it to be traveling at 10 hertz. And so in my LFO, I know that I want the LFO frequency to speed up when I move the vector joystick to the right. And let's make sure that the LFO is patched into here at full depth. So AMS Mixer 3. Let me go to AMS Mixer 3. And I'll just turn up that LFO. And now with vector joystick all the way to the right, I go into AMS Mixer 1, and I actually don't need to touch these yet. Sorry, I'm kind of jumbled. It's a very complicated patch, so bear with me a little bit. Going into the LFO, let's turn up the intensity of the AMS mixer in order to get to that 10 hertz. So I think that might be around where it's at. Let's compare. Let's try changing the depth a little bit more. Maybe that's the rate. Let's check that. I'd say that's the rate. Okay, good. So now let's get to the same rate as when it's in the middle. So let's listen to the way the pedal sounds first. So it's at this rate with VJS plus X at 64. Now in our version, at VJS plus X at 64, it's traveling at this rate, which is way too slow. And in order for us to get the correct response for VJS plus X, that's why I had patched in the shapers. So with the shapers, I want to, if you imagine all of the values along a line, I want to drag the values down. So if I let's say that this is our line of values of VJS plus X. and this is the middle of VJS plus X. We have faster rates as we go up. So what I want to do is I want to drag all these values down towards the bottom in order to get these faster rates closer to the middle. And so to do that, I use the symmetric shape type, and then I drag down. So by doing this, you'll hear that I will speed up the LFO rate. And I'll probably need to go a bit faster than that, which is why I cascaded into AMS Mixer 1. Now let's check the way the original pedal sounds to see where we kind of need to get to. Actually, I guess a little bit faster. Sounded like I need to get a little bit faster to me. Whoops. And you'll notice another thing, and this is where it gets even trickier. Again, you'd think that chorus wouldn't be this tricky, but it is. You'll notice that the depth is lower now. So in order for us to mimic that, let me try to remember here. So I want to be able to turn down LFO depth with VJS plus X. Because chorus units, the faster the modulation, the more pitch shifting you're getting. So we go to our oscillators, go to pitch, and now we're using AMS Mixer 3, which is our LFO that's being controlled by VJS plus Y. But let's take intensity all the way down. And now instead, we use VJS plus X to turn up and down the intensity. There we are. And so now it'll sound like this, which should be about the same intensity as our pedal. Same speed, same intensity. Switching back to EXI2. Perfect. Excellent. Now let's do a sweep with the vector joystick going from west to east on the, this is EXI2. And now with the pedal. Excellent. Okay, so now we just need to put everything together. Let's go back to 50/50 and let's patch in VJS plus Y, and I will mimic the same thing. So 50/50 dry wet is putting this up, and then VJS plus Y. And now let's put our depth all the way down and use VJS plus Y. And that would be, that's like LFO volume. So to do that on EXI2, go to my AMS mixer, 3, LFO volume. I put all the way down and I use VJS plus Y. Okay, I think we did everything correctly, hopefully. So let's go from south to north. This is with the pedal. And now let's go from south to north on our EXI2. And now let's go from west to east on our EXI2. And now let's go from west to east on our pedal. Nice. And so that's pretty much it for this. I'll run through some more vector joystick movements in a second, but I hope this shows just how crazy it is to mimic complex modulation in a synthesizer versus just using a simple pedal and having all the things mapped. And I could just throw in some alternate modulation sources in here and make this so much more complex than what the original unit was, or even what it would take to recreate with other devices. So now let's just kind of move the vector joystick around and find something nice. And I guess I can go to the vector joystick screen just to so you can see the parameter values here. Now, without moving the position of the joystick, let's see what that sounds like on our version. A little bit different, but still very similar. And moving that vector joystick around. There is one thing I didn't talk about. By recreating this chorus ourselves, we could technically put key sync on and then have per voice chorusing, which is kind of cool. The effect is negligible, but still the fact that I can have each note moving up and down in a different way will give a slightly greater thickness to the sound. Compared to the pedal. Switching again. And let's listen to both at once. And then we'll try moving the vector joystick around as well. Nice. Okay. Thank you for watching this long and complicated session. Take care.